Something I wanted to work on here is expanding some of the tools I've made myself in my own workshop. I've previously made a few joinery mallets, and it's very enjoying to use a tool you've made yourself while working on other projects. So something I picked up recently was a blank for a marking knife. So what we're going to do is we're going to take some pieces, some scraps I have of some leopard wood, and make some scales for a marking knife. And I think this will be a great expansion to some of my own personal tools that I've made myself in my workshop. Let's take a look at our inventory of our supplies that we're going to be using for this project. We have our scraps of leopard wood here. We have our pins that are going to go through our pre-drilled holes in our marking knife. And we've got our marking knife itself. And this end here is very, very sharp. A marking knife is mainly used to create very fine lines when you're looking to get exact measurements, much finer than a pencil. Although a pencil line is very good and it can be very quick, a marking knife will be a little more precise. So the first thing I've done here is I've actually wiped this clean with some acetone just to make sure there's no residual glues or grease or anything on here, because we're going to be attaching these to this with some epoxy before we use the pins to finally hold it in place. So we're going to use our hand miter saw on this to cut our scales. We've got our scales cut down to size here, and if we just kind of put them roughly where we want them, you can see it's already starting to take shape. Now, we don't want it to look so blocky and chunky. We're going to want to round a lot of this off. So we are going to get the sander out, and we're going to give it a very light sanding with 120 to kind of soften some of these edges. Now, we're not going to do the whole thing because we'll wait till it's fully assembled before we actually give it a really fine, detailed sanding. So we've given these both a nice light sanding to kind of just take off a little bit of the edges. And then I also gave them, if you can see, just a little bit of a round over on the top here. So that way as this sits on here, there's not just a sharp edge, that it's a bit smoother. And again, as we finalize the sanding towards the very end, we'll give this a nice, much more detailed cleanup. But the next step here is we're going to mix up some epoxy and attach one of these to the knife itself.
Okay, we've had everything dry. So all the epoxy is dry and our pins are inserted and those are dry. What we're going to do next is we're going to cut off the excess of the pins here, and then we're going to use a ball peen hammer to flatten them out. So I think the process is called peening. So we're going to get these all firmly attached. Right, we're going to use the anvil here on my vise to just make sure we square these out. All right, we've got the pins all attached. And so what the process of peening does is it takes the brass and it kind of widens it out. So that way it provides a kind of a clamping force on both sides here. So the next thing we're going to do is give this a good sanding. And then we'll get ready to apply some finish. All right, we've got everything all sanded down, and I think it's a good enough sanding here. It's just kind of a tool handle. So we're going to finish this with some Danish oil.
Well, that wraps up our marking knife project here. I'd say it turned out really well. The leopardwood scales are very nice. The Danish oil really brought out a lot of the colors. And this will be a great tool to add to the workshop to many of my other projects. If you like this video, click like, and as always, subscribe for more videos. Thank you.